Hello, everyone, and welcome and thank you for joining us today to this webinar from Veeam, where we will be talking about how to protect Google Cloud workloads with Veeam Backup for Google Cloud version 4. We have had a lot of new releases in the past 2 months with our solutions for on-premise, cloud, disaster recovery, and monitoring tools. But this session will be focused on how we can properly protect the Google Cloud services and infrastructure. Before we start, I wanted to do some introductions. My name is Hani Imam, and I am the Public Cloud Insight System Engineer. My team is responsible for protecting pretty much anything and everything that runs in the three main hyperscalers, AWS, Azure, and GCP. Joining me today is Sebastian. Sebastian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. I'm so happy to have so many attendees today. My name is Sebastian. I am part of Veeam's global team, focusing on finding the best ways to protect public cloud hyperscalers. And today I will do a live demo on how easy it is for Veeam to protect Google Cloud ecosystems.
As always, we do record these webinars, so if at any point you need to drop and like to catch on what you have missed, or you wanted to share the webinar with a colleague, we will be sharing the recording within a couple of days. Also, everyone has been muted to ensure the best audio experience for everyone, but that does not mean we do not want to hear from you, and we would like to keep this session as interactive as possible. So if at any point you had any questions, requests, or comments, please don't hesitate to post those in the chat or in the questions tab, and we will make sure to address those throughout the webinar. We also carved out some time at the very end to answer any outstanding questions. So let me get started here so that I would not take a lot of time from Sebastian so that he can go through his amazing demo, because I think that's the best way to showcase our product and its value. First, I wanted to point out to a statistic from our 2023 Cloud Protection Trend Report that shows that 61% of organizations today rely on cloud native snapshot to protect their cloud environment. And that is an interesting number, as we've seen this increase over time, showing that more and more organizations are being more responsible and understanding the need to protect their own data in the cloud. And snapshots are often the first line of defense. The benefits of leveraging snapshots is that it gives the organizations the capability to restore their data with the least amount of data loss because of its low RPO capability, and also recover that data quickly because of its low RTO capability. But relying solely on snapshots do have its drawbacks if they are being used as the only way to protect your cloud environment. Snapshots are often not independent of the disks that they are protecting, and that is an important thing to take into consideration in case of a ransomware attack, because if that was to happen to your production disks, then most of those snapshots will also be compromised and you will not be able to recover. Next, snapshots are generally more expensive to retain because of how they are stored. Snapshots live on disks that are the most expensive storage, and they're stored in the bigger cloud and cost a lot over there. Also, when it comes to performing file level recovery from a snapshot, it's often a cumbersome process that consists of 10 steps, which could be also complex to recover just a single file or folder, and results in a longer time to be able to recover that file or folder. Finally, they are a point solution, meaning they are for that platform and only that platform. So in a case of a hybrid environment, users will not have the ability to recover into another environment. I also think it's important to show the cloud shared responsibility model that shows what Google is responsible for in the cloud and what the customer must do to maintain their cloud environment and protect their data. As you can see, Google will make sure that the data center is secure, the hardware is all in place, networking is up, storage is available as well. But the protection of an organization's data is relying on the organization itself. End user is responsible for setting up those backup schedules, making sure the network is secure, putting in firewalls where needed, and giving access only to the users who should have access to only the resources that they need to have access to. So as we've mentioned at the beginning, Veeam does have the ability to protect workloads within Google Cloud in an automated and secured fashion, and we built it on three main pillars that we like to focus on. First is around security. We know that data protection is part of any robust, well-rounded security strategy. Backups should always be a part of it. Second, we know you need to have a clean backup to recover from. We know it's not just about backup, but also about the recovery process, and you need to be able to recover as quickly as possible in any different scenario with the flexibility as well. You need to be able to do it in a reliable fashion without wasting too much time and costing organization downtime. Third, we want to do all of that with zero compromise. So I'm going to just double click through those and talk about them in more detail. Starting with relentless security. On the security front, we want to isolate those backups. The same principle of logical or even physical separation of on-premises applies in the cloud as well. It's just a different way of going about it. In the word of Google, we are talking about projects. Google deems these projects as security boundaries. So as an example, if we were to have production workloads running in a project and snapshots stored in the very same project, that isn't considered as isolated. So the goal is to isolate those backups into their own separate project. Then you will want to be able to practice the least privilege identity and access management and role-based access between those two environments. So what permissions are there for a backup appliance living within a backup project, for example, and how can it communicate and what can it do in your production project? Finally, around encryption, as we need to ensure that data integrity, so we can leverage things like AES 256-bit encryption to help encrypt backup data. Next is around fast and reliable recovery, and we truly pride ourselves in the ability to recover anywhere. That can be either back into like your Google Cloud environment, maybe you want to recover it to a different project or into a different region, but we don't stop there. We can as well recover back to on-premise, or maybe you want to recover a virtual machine or even a SQL database back to your on-premise. But as well, like for virtual machines, we give the capability to recover out into different cloud providers such as AWS and Azure. And that also applies to full and file level as well. So whether you want to recover an entire instance or do granular recovery, whether you want to do that in place of the existing instance or as a new instance, even in a new location, again, that flexibility is there and easy to do. We aim to make it as reliable and as simple as possible. All that approach is fully automated with a wizard-driven and self-service workflow, whether that's an entire instance or even just trying to do a file level recovery, the granular recovery we were talking about earlier. Even if you're doing it from a snapshot, all that tasks are usually manual process in the past, but with Veeam, that is all automated to make it as easy and as simple as possible for you. Finally, the zero compromise approach. We know that backup and recovery is absolutely necessary, and quite often it's at least a one person, if not more, job. But we can't spend all day, every day, just babysitting Google Cloud Backup. So we automated everything with a policy-based approach that comes to the detection of instances within a project or projects, regions, leveraging tags, and then automatically applying them into the backup policy that you've created to protect that workload. And more of that during the demo. Sebastian will show how those are set up. Creating an image level backup that can be stored in object storage to reduce your cloud spend for long-term retention backups. And finally, being hybrid ready, where you can move your workloads across different platforms as easy as possible with as little work needed from your end as possible. Now, let's talk about the architecture. Whether your workloads are spread across one or multiple GCP projects, Veeam Backup for Google Cloud can be deployed in a project isolated from your production, and we've named it here as a backup project. And from here, the appliance will match the vendor's capability in creating cloud-native snapshots of the compute instance or Cloud SQL, whether that's MySQL or PostgreSQL instances, depending what you are looking to protect. Going further, and what makes Veeam Backup for Google Cloud unique is the engine that will automatically launch a proxy VM instance in the same GCP region where the process instance resides. That worker is responsible of reading your instances or databases, taking that disk, converting it into an image level backup, and storing it into your object storage to reduce your cost. Once that task is done, whether it's protecting or even trying to do a restore of that instance, that worker instance or proxy VM that I've mentioned is terminated immediately. So it's no longer sitting in your GCP account and accumulating more cost. As the worker does the heavy lifting in creating the image level backup, it reads that data from the persistent disk and compresses it and encrypts it, making it also platform agnostic to be able to transfer it to a different cloud or even back on premise when it comes to doing the restores. Those image level backups can be stored either in a standard, nearline, or the archive storage classes, depending on your retention period, to also make sure that you're reducing your cost as much as possible. Now, when the backup session is completed, again, the worker instance automatically removed, so it's not sitting in your Google project anymore. And when it comes to doing restore operations, you can restore the entire Google Compute instance or only the disk associated to a VM, or doing a file level recovery from a snapshot or from the image level backup into the original or a new location. Let's talk quickly about what's the benefit of Veeam over here. So it's not only that we match the vendor's capability by creating those cloud native snapshots, but we also compress them to reduce your cloud cost. We encrypt those backups to make sure that they're secured. And on top of that, it is being platform agnostic, giving you the flexibility and not locking you into a single vendor, giving you the capability to do whatever you want with your data. And how do we do that? How can we restore into different locations? It's very simple. You just connect the Veeam Backup for Google into the Veeam Backup and Replication, which is our core product, giving you the capability to do instant VM recovery or direct restore to AWS and Azure. One way to deploy Veeam Backup for Google Cloud is through the Google Cloud Marketplace. You just go to the Marketplace and search for Veeam Backup. From there, you'll be able to launch Veeam Backup and select the settings for network access, the size of the appliance that you want, etc. Once that process has been completed, you will be able to access the appliance through its IP address, and you will be presented with this web user interface that Sebastian will go through now.
Thank you very much. Okay, so before I start, just like Hani mentioned, Veeam Backup for Google Cloud is a backup and recovery tool that allows you to protect Google Cloud workloads and push these backups to Google buckets. Either create the Veeam backups that are compressed, platform agnostic, or also leveraging cloud native snapshots. Therefore, we can match also the vendor's capabilities. Now, I imagine that some of you are 100% within Google. So in this case, Veeam Backup for Google Cloud is a one-stop, is one tool that can act as a standalone solution to protect your Google Cloud workloads and store these backups within Google. However, I do imagine that most of you are already Veeam users, power users that have, let's say, a multi-cloud approach or a hybrid approach like Google plus another cloud vendor or Google plus on-prem. So Veeam Backup for Google Cloud can be integrated with Veeam Backup and Replication, and this thing will allow you to either replicate your backups from Google to other clouds or on-prem to, let's say, to follow the best practice rule, have 3 copies of your data onto different media, one of them off-site, or to do restores because the Veeam backups are platform agnostic, do restores of any Google Compute instance, let's say, to another cloud vendor or back to on-prem. So in the first part of the demo, we'll focus on how Veeam Backup for Google Cloud can protect Google workloads within the Google ecosystem. So copying these backups within a Google bucket. So this is the appliance Veeam Backup for Google Cloud that for the guys that are joining this webinar is or can be deployed from the Google Marketplace. And this will be the first screen that you'll always see after everything is configured within the appliance. In this screen, you have a dashboard with everything that is going on within the appliance. Okay, what is the status of all my sessions? How many of them failed successfully? Warning messages. What is the status of all my cloud native snapshots, but also my image level backups, my archives? How many workloads am I protecting? And one of the most important ones is, okay, are there any bottlenecks when I'm creating my backups? Because we want to make sure that the process of creating backups or doing restores is without any hiccups from start to end. Now, after you deploy the appliance, actually the first screen that you'll see for the very first time will be this one. It will be the Getting Started guide. And here we have 5 prerequisite steps that you need to complete in order to create successful backup policies. And these 5 prerequisite steps were tailored in a way that would accommodate small customers, medium customers, but also enterprise customers. So this appliance is production and enterprise ready. Okay. Now, the first prerequisite step is to register an application that will allow you to grant missing permissions within the appliance, let's say, to protect specific applications directly from the appliance. So we protect data, or we access data, we access your workloads, and we copy it to the Google buckets using, of course, the Google best practices, IAM roles and permissions. The second one is to create a service account. The service account will grant us access to the project, to where the resources will be saved. And okay, if I'm going to protect something, tell me what projects or what folders you wish the appliance to protect and should have access to. The next stop is related to the repositories. So this is the step where we tell the appliance, okay, tell me in what Google bucket you wish your imageable backups to be saved to. How do you create a bucket? As an example, click the add button, give it a friendly name, let's say in your repo, hit next. Oh, I have a, doesn't like spaces. Select the project where you wish your imageable backups to be saved to. Usually this will be a project, just like Heidi mentioned, that is isolated from your production workloads. We don't usually recommend to keep your backups into the same project where your production data resides. And then within the selected project, okay, tell me the service account, which will grant me access to that project. And then within the selected project, give me a bucket, okay? Give me a Google bucket where I can save my backups to. Here we can create a new folder, say Veeam Backup, and this is the folder where the imageable backups will reside. Now, for this particular folder, and depending on the retention policies and the frequency of your backups, the appliance allows you to leverage the 3 storage classes: the standard, which is the most suitable one for the daily backups, the nearline that can be suitable for weeklies or monthly backups, and the archive tier, which is most suitable for the monthlies and yearlies backups. Once the storage class is selected, then the next step, okay, we don't only encrypt the data itself, but we can also add the encryption at the repository level as well. So here, if we enable the encryption, you'll have the option to specify a password that, of course, you will need to have the password in order to restore the data or to access the data. So don't lose it. And the last prerequisite step was related to the workers. Now, again, just like Heidi mentioned, the workers are responsible with the interaction with the cloud repositories, performing data copy tasks, file level restores. Therefore, anytime we touch data, that's when a worker is automatically deployed. But as soon as the process is complete, meaning the backup is finished or the restore is completed, now this worker instance is terminated and it's no longer sitting in your GCP account. Now, as this worker is completely managed by the appliance, all we have to do here is, okay, how do you add a worker config? So imagine that, for example, you would like to protect your workloads from the Belgium data center, as an example. You select the region that you'd like to protect, select the availability zone, and then all you have to do is to, okay, if the appliance will spawn this worker for me, tell me in what VPC, in what subnet, and what firewall rules should be applied to this worker, okay? And that's it. From this step onwards, the appliance will take care of the entire process. Now, I will click cancel, going back to getting started. Now, once the prerequisite steps are completed, now we can create backup policies and protect our Google workloads. At the top, notice that we have separate tabs with the different services that we can protect: compute instances, VMs, or Cloud SQL. Either these are MySQL or PostgreSQL. And for the VMs, I already have here a backup policy that is designed to protect a couple of VMs for which I'm creating snapshots and imageable backups. So I am preferring to keep 2 copies of my data, although this is not a mandatory requirement, and on how you can create or edit a backup policy. So the first step will always be, okay, give it a friendly name so you can recognize it easily. The second one is, okay, tell me the project that you'd like to protect, because we are aware that the appliance should be enterprise ready. I imagine that there are people in this webinar that are working with thousands of VMs that are spread across different projects or files or folders. You can create a backup policy to create an entire folder, meaning all the projects within the folder. So the same retention policy will be applied to all projects, or you can filter them down by project. Next, for the selected project, we will select the region that you'd like to protect. Let's say in my case, I know that my resources are only in the US East data center. I hit apply. Within the selected region or regions, we can either protect all VMs or we can filter them down either by instance name or by label. To be honest, the label is the most popular option. Protect all resources with a particular label associated to them. In terms of targets, okay, you have the option to select where do you want to keep your cloud native snapshots, and last but not least, enable the creation of the imageable backups. These are the Veeam backups, the platform agnostic ones that are compressed, encrypted. And if I want to create imageable backups as well, we need to specify, remember the fourth prerequisite step, okay, tell me the bucket where you wish your imageable backups to reside, either for the dailies, weeklies, or the archived years, let's say for monthlies or yearly backups. The next step is related to the scheduling. Okay, so this is the part where we tell the appliance how frequent we want to perform our dailies, weeklies, monthlies, and yearly backups. And for each section, we have an interactive calendar where we can select the hours for the dailies backups, in this case, when I want to perform my snapshots or my imageable backups. And of course, the retention policy, how many snapshots you want to keep and for how long you want to keep the imageable backups. With Veeam customers tend to have approach to leverage both cloud native snapshots and imageable backups, but because the imageable backups are way cheaper and are also platform agnostic, most Veeam customers opt in to keep only a couple of snapshots, 1 or 2 snapshots, and rely heavily on the imageable backups. Next step related to labels. Okay, if I'm going to create any snapshots, I can add a specific custom label to it. And for settings, because we want to be sure every single time that if I'm going to create a bucket, my backup chain will always be intact and there will be no threat whatsoever if someone would, let's say, accidentally delete the backup chain or the bucket where the backups are stored, we can always run a health check. In this case, on the first Sunday of every month, we can run this health check that will check that the backup chain is still intact. And this way, you will be 100% sure that in case of a restore process starts, this will finish successfully from start to end. Now, prior to executing anything, based on the retention policies that I have selected and the VMs that I am protecting, the appliance offers me an estimated monthly cost prior to executing anything. Therefore, you'll know in advance how much the backups will cost you at the end of the month with this particular backup policy. And last but not least, the permissions. Okay, do I have sufficient privileges? Do I have the permissions to create the imageable backups and to protect these workloads and to ship these backups into the specified Google buckets? Okay, we don't want to have backup policies that may start whenever these are due and fail. No, we need to make sure that whenever the backup policy starts, it will finish successfully. Now, for Cloud SQL, we have the exact same story. Everything is standardized. However, this time we have a couple of backup policies here that are protecting, this time, Google Cloud SQL, either MySQL or Postgres. And here you have two options, either to create backup policies, for MySQL or Postgres. As an example, if I click on edit on any of them, I will have the exact same steps, friendly name, tell me the project where your Cloud SQL instances or databases are, tell me the region that you'd like to protect, and this time, instead of protecting VMs, we will be protecting Cloud SQL instances. In terms of processing option, and okay, what is different when comparing to protecting cloud instances is that we can take a backup directly from the production instance. However, just to have that database consistency in place, not to have all the transactions saved, copied, stored, we can use also a staging server. Everything is fine and dandy. We have seen how easy it is to create backup policies. Now let's check what are our restore options. Now, before I start into the restore options, allow me to refresh the screen because this is the file level recovery. Okay, now under protected data, again, at the top, we have the VMs that we are protecting, for which we have restore points, either snapshots or imageable backups. And we have the option either to restore the entire VM or only do disk restores or do the file level recovery. Now, for file level recovery, if you want to restore only a couple of files, a couple of folders, and not the entire compute instance, you can select from any restore point that you have available, either from an archive, standard backup, or a snapshot, any restore point, hit next, give it a reason, click finish. And what the appliance will do is we'll provide you an URL that will allow you to open it into a browser window and navigate through all the files, all the folders. Now, I've already started a process earlier. So this is the URL that I've mentioned. I can copy it into the browser window. Now I can navigate through all the files, all the folders that I'm interested in to recover, add them to a restore list, and then I can decide, okay, if I have the option to download them locally on my local machine. The other type of restores would be I have the option to restore the entire instance or do only a disk restore. Now, for the entire instance, similar to the file level recovery, we can do the restore from any restore point that we have available, snapshot, image level backup. I have just selected a random restore point, hit next. And now I can restore it to the original location with different settings. Hit next, give the service account that will give me permissions to execute the restore process. I have a verification that I have access and permissions to execute this process. By the way, if by any chance you would have, let's say, missing permissions, you will have the option to grant them automatically from within the appliance. So you don't have to go back to your Google account, service account, IAM role, edit the role with the missing permissions, and then go back to the appliance. No, the appliance takes care for everything. It will identify the missing permissions and it will update the IAM role that is being used by the appliance. Hit next, give it a reason, let's say demo, hit next, and that's it. You click finish and the restore starts. It's that easy. Or we can go with the second option, restore to a new location with different settings. And now I will have more settings at my disposal so to change. And by this I mean, tell me the project where you wish your VM to be restored to. Tell me the new region where you want it to be restored to. Tell me the availability zone. Tell me the encryption schema that will be applied for the restore VM. Tell me the instance. Okay, I cannot restore the same instance with the same name because this one already exists and Google doesn't allow me to have two VMs with the same name. So I will just rename the VM. I can also change the size of the compute instance that I'm going to restore. And if I'm going to restore this in a new project, a new availability zone, and a new, with those settings, tell me the VPC subnet where you wish the appliance to be saved to. Okay, so if I go with default, hit apply. Again, it will verify that I have access to do the restore. Hit next, give the friendly reason, next. Everything is checked out. If I click finish, the restore will start. For Cloud SQL, we have the exact same story. Everything is standardized. So, for example, I can restore the entire instance server, so the Cloud SQL instance, or do database restore. I can only restore some databases, a couple of databases that I'm interested to. Here I can add, okay, this is my SQL database that I have available in my server. I can choose one of the available restore points. And now following the exact same pattern, tell me the project, service account, where you want it to be restored. I can change the name. I can change, okay, this is the version, the configuration checks. Oh, I have a check that failed. Google MySQL, the database name already exists on your instance. Okay, cool. So because I'm trying to restore the database into Cloud SQL instance on which I have a database with the same name, this is not allowed within GCP. This means that I will need to modify the name of the original database. Or if I change, okay, or the second option would be to change the instance server where I want it to be restored to. Some of the database configuration have issues. The database may not confirm. Okay, we can give it a try. Everything passed out. I know that everything will be okay. Give the reason, finish, and that's it. For those of you, what you have seen so far is that Veeam Backup for Google Cloud allows you to protect compute instances in Cloud SQL and save these backups to Google buckets. Now, for those of you who have a hybrid approach or a multi-cloud approach, you can integrate Veeam Backup for Google Cloud with Veeam Backup and replication. And this will allow you not only to replicate your backups from Google to AWS, Azure on-prem, but also do restores from Google of Google Compute instances, for example, to AWS EC2 or Azure VMs or VMs on-prem and so forth. Now, how do I connect the two? Under Backup Infrastructure, Manage Servers, if I click on Add Server, Veeam Cloud Native Backup Appliances, notice that we have the same appliance or appliances designed to protect each major hyperscaler. Of course, every appliance has its own caveats, but we are interested in the Veeam Backup for GCP one. And we can either connect to an existing appliance that was most probably deployed via Google Marketplace, or deploy a brand new one directly from Veeam Backup and replication. And from this step onwards, if I go deploy a new appliance, this will be the steps that I'll need to take to deploy a compute instance within my Google project. And on that compute instance, that is where the appliance will reside. So just a few steps: select the GCP service account, select the data center where you want it to be restored, the availability zone, the virtual machine name, go with VBG, something short. It will work on validating the VM name against Google APIs, just to validate the name. And the next steps would be, okay, if I'm going to deploy this brand new compute instance with the appliance, tell me what network settings should be applied to it. What VPC, what subnet, what firewall rule should be applied for the appliance. And for the IP settings, okay, what type of IP would you like it to be assigned? Okay, so these are the network. I hit next. The IP assignment, either dynamic or a static IP, and I will need the credentials to log into the appliance. Okay, so here you specify, okay, what will be my initial credentials to log in into Veeam Backup for Google Cloud? And once logged in, you will be able to create new users with role-based access control to limit access to different parts of features within the appliance or to workloads. Now, as I've already hooked up my appliance to Veeam Backup and replication, I will hit cancel here. And once the integration is done, you can connect to it directly from VBR, and it will open a browser window. It will redirect you to the same screen. The session timed out. Let me re-log in. So this is the same appliance that we have seen earlier. This is Veeam Backup for Google Cloud. Under Home, Jobs, I will have visibility across all my backup policies. Either these are from Google, AWS, Azure, on-prem. This means that I will have one single pane of glass across all my backup jobs, across all my hyperscalers, and on-prem in one place, in one screen. I can start them, disable them, delete them directly from this console. I can also edit them. Let's say if I click on Edit, it will open me a browser window. It will redirect me to Veeam Backup for Google Cloud. It will open the backup policy that I have selected, and I can edit it directly from here. And on top of it, I will have access to all my backups, regardless of their whereabouts. Either it's cloud or on-prem. For GCP, I have the option to restore from cloud native snapshots where back to Google. This is the only option. Why? Because snapshots are cloud proprietary. But because we take the Veeam backups that are platform agnostic, we can restore these VMs, let's say, in this example, either back to Google or to AWS, Azure, or on-prem. I'm going to EC2 as an EC2 instance within AWS. So this is the VM that I have selected. I can restore from any restore point that I have available. Let's see this one. And once I hit next, I will need to provide, okay, tell me the AWS account where you want it to be restored. Tell me the data center where you want this one to be restored. Tell me the new name of the EC2 instance. Tell me the size of the EC2 instance. Tell me the network of the EC2 instance. Tell me the VPC, subnet, and security group that will be applied. And more or less, these are the same steps as restoring this compute instance to Google, but this time we'll restore it to AWS. The process is exactly the same. Now, I did mention also that VBR allows you to replicate your backups. from within Google and have another copy on-prem or in other cloud. It's always a best practice not to keep all your eggs in the same basket, right? So what this means is that under backup infrastructure, under backup repositories, here I have created an S3 bucket that was designed to keep to have another copy of my GCP buckets. Now, how did I create this one? If I click on Add Repository, I can select an object storage. I can select any object storage that I have available, either it's Wasabi, Microsoft, IBM, Google, Amazon, S3 compatible. In my case, I went with the AWS S3. Select the type of the S3 bucket, give it a friendly name, tell me the account where your bucket is, or where do you wish to copy your backups to. So give me the credentials of your AWS account. And the next step, okay, tell me the bucket. Tell me the data center where I can locate the bucket. Go with Frankfurt, and here I can query through all the backups in all the buckets that I have available in the Frankfurt data center. And this is exactly what I've done here as well. Now, once the bucket is created, under Home, Backup Copy, here I have created a backup copy job that is copying whatever I'm creating with Veeam Backup for Google Cloud with my backup policy to AWS. So if I go and edit, friendly name, the copy mode, either immediate copy or periodic copy. The object, what do you want to copy? I want to copy all my backups that are generated by this backup policy or by certain jobs, repositories, or backups, specific backups. Where? Now select the repository where you wish your backups to be restored to. And here I have selected the bucket, the repository that I have created in AWS. I have the option to modify the compression, to do encryption at the repository level, so we can add encryption in S3 as well. Because Google doesn't provide immutability yet, it's always a practice or a common scenario for customers to have another copy of their data from Google to AWS into an S3 bucket that is immutable. Okay, and last but not least, tell me the frequency. Okay, how frequent you want to move your backups from GCP to AWS. And this is pretty much it. I hope you found this demo useful. And if there is one thing that I like to remember, is that Veeam Backup for Google Cloud allows you to protect Google Cloud workloads and ship these backups into the Google buckets or create cloud native snapshots. But together with Veeam Backup and replication, you have the option to follow the 3-to-1 rule. Have 3 copies of your data on 2 different media, 1 of them offsite. So this means that we allow you to synchronize your backups from Google to any platform, but also when it comes to restores, to it, okay, back to Google, but I will always have the option to restore it somewhere else as well. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the chat window. I see that Hani was really busy and answered a lot of questions.
Yeah, one of the most interesting questions that I thought is the questions around the worker and how expensive are they over running in the cloud. And they don't stay running out in the cloud. They're just spun up during the operation that they are tasked to do. But as soon as they're done, they're terminated and no longer accumulating any more cost.
Correct.
Yeah, and appreciate everyone's time today. If there is any more further questions that you guys might come up with, please feel free, reach us out at public.cloud@veeam.com. I appreciate everyone's time today. Sebastian, did you have any last comments, remarks that you wanted to say before we wrap this up?
No, it was a pleasure having this webinar for you guys. Again, I hope it was helpful and informative. Feel free to write us at public.cloud@veeam.com. Me, Hani, or our team would be more than happy to assist you with any questions or technical issues that you might encounter with our products. Hopefully, we will see again to our next webinars.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your week.
Bye, guys. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.